we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today we have Senator Melissa Hurtado joining us once again. Melissa, how's it going? And thanks for joining us.
It's going well. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited to speak with you all about water.
Yeah, just kind of a lot of things, even though you were on here only like a few months ago, a lot of things have changed so far. Can you kind of give us a little update about what's going on with you and your district, has changed a bit kind of, right?
Yes, it has. It's changed. My hometown of Sanger it's no longer in my current Senate district, but my district is still all there outside of Sanger, and went from was running in Senate District 14. I'll be running in Senate District 16 now. I'm looking forward to continuing the fight for this region and for the Central Valley.
Nice. So I guess you're gonna have to, move a little bit, a couple miles to to stay in the district and run for 16. Is that right?
That is correct. I'll be moving. I have moved already.
leaving the hometown now. Wow.
Scary stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. But I guess what the cool thing is I guess the issues are pretty similar and present. Always what's big down there in the Central Valley is the issue of water, and you've been making a lot of news lately about water in the valley, and you had that panel on dealing with it, and what are some of the solutions you guys have come about, and what are you thinking about how to solve some of the water issues down there?
Well, I would say that water is not just an issue here in the Central Valley. I think water is an issue for many people around the world. I mean, look, there's going to be less water due to climate change. And the question becomes, how do we deal with the population that we have and the communities that we have with less water,
right,
in our own state, but also around the world, because there's going to be consequences to having less water around the world, not just in the Central Valley, not just in the state of California, but all around the world. It's going to impact Californians one way or another. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of figuring out what that looks like, and how we're going to more efficiently manage the water that we have, the limited water that we have here.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. Like, we had so much water at the end of the year and right at the beginning, and early January, my kids drew all these sidewalk chalks outside on the driveway, and here we are 2 months later, and they're still out there because it hasn't rained since. So here we are. Thought we were gonna have a great wet year, and now it doesn't look like it anymore. There's no rain in sight. So what do we do when we have these dwindling water supplies, and what's the plan right now?
And that's the scary part, right? Because it's not just less water underground, it's less water from rain, less water from snow. We have canals that deliver water from the parts that do get where water comes from, and they're not being fixed, so we're losing water. And so there's so many questions to be answered. One is, how do we manage our water more efficiently? How do we repair our current infrastructure systems so that the very limited water that we have, that we can get it delivered to the communities that it serves? But also, what is not working? I think the challenge in the state of California is that we have a lot of different entities or agencies that touch on water that really need to more effectively communicate with one another. That creates other challenges for the limited water supply that we have. So I think that I introduced Senate Bill 559 to repair the canals. That obviously had some hurdles. I mean, we had some successes in terms of getting some money to fund it. It still needs to be fully funded. It hasn't happened yet. I think that's the plan I had, and continuing to push and move forward with it. But we don't really have a real, I would say, plan. I know that the Biden-Harris administration is working on an interagency or has an interagency work group to address the drought that is looking at many, many different aspects of how drought impacts communities. I think that Senate Bill 1219 is very similar in that sense that we need to figure out and have a sort of plan, an interagency work group that works towards addressing the many issues that the drought will impact California.
Yeah, I guess something you touched upon is the bureaucracy of water, right? You have the federal government, we have a state agency, we have local irrigation districts and stuff like that. Can for our listeners who don't understand the bureaucracy of water, can you kind of give us an overview of kind of the state's bureaucracy and the local governance bureaucracy, kind of on how water is divvied up in the state?
Yeah, look, there's I think about close to 20, or if not a little over 20 different agencies that touch on water issues. We have the Department of Water Resources, we have the Water Resources Control Board, we have the Department of Fish and Wildlife, we have the local water boards, we have the Water Commission. There's so many agencies that touch on different aspects, from allocation of water to water rights, which the Water Resources Control Board is responsible for, to infrastructure, infrastructure for local communities, infrastructure for a statewide water supply,
Right.
like dams and whatnot. So there's a lot of bureaucracy that, look, just last year we had there was an attack on a water treatment plant in the Bay Area, and it was an attack on it was a cyber attack. And so this is what less water supply around the world is going to create these types of challenges. And if we're already beginning to see those kinds of attacks in the state, and we're not protected, we're way behind. And we need to have a system in California that works and that protects the limited water supply, and that protects Californians in every aspect that you can possibly think of, because climate change is going to create just exactly those types of scenarios. And if not, it's going to make it worse.
Right. That's interesting. You're kind of talking about your canal bill, and then you listed all those 20 agencies, and I just started getting anxiety thinking about how to work with all those agencies to try to achieve something. Kind of there's got to be a way to simplify this. What are your thoughts to kind of streamlining this kind of bureaucracy to make it easier to achieve goals that work for all Californians?
Well, look, I'm going to be honest and say that I wish that I had the perfect solution or the answer to that. And the reality is that I don't, because I don't know exactly every detail of the job that someone that works in DWR, or someone that works at the Water Resource Control Board, or the EPA. And so that's why I think that the whole goal of SB 1219 is to bring this interagency work group together, to be able to say, okay, these are the different departments. This is where we can kind of maybe we need some reorganization in this area, or I mean, that's the whole point of it, is that how can they, the experts that do the day-to-day work, that see all the issues and challenges, but also they have to see also the potential solutions to how do you better work together and make sure that it's simple.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, we had Dr. Marty Ralph come on, a climatologist, kind of talk about atmospheric rivers. And he was kind of going over working with the federal government. A lot of things dealing with water are a bit antiquated, dealing from the 1960s and things like that. Kind of, I guess, in dealing with the state water system, especially the State Water Control Board, kind of, how are you finding how it's antiquated, and how maybe it might be, able to kind of bring it up to modern times to help us deal with today's challenges?
Well, every day I learn something new, I will admit. And I'll say that just the fact that we have cyber attacks to try to poison water. I mean, who would ever thought in the 1960s, and some laws even earlier, that something of the sort would even happen, where with just, a little moving of your computer, you can poison an entire community's water. we didn't have that in mind, and that's why there's a major need to modernize this. I've also been working in trying to learn a little bit more about the role that NASA is playing in terms of the research that they're doing and studying the future of deltas and water management. And there's just so much research that people are working on that we need to just find more information. There's a lot of technology out there that NASA is also working on and trying to measure water availability. So these are all the types of things that we need to kind of bring in and figure out what additional needs we may have. Maybe the technology and the tools that are being worked on at the moment are not enough, that they need to be improved, and how do we improve those? But I think we have a system in place that we don't even know how much water is being perhaps stolen, or where exactly water is going. That's all information that we need to be able to collect and improve on. But the tools and the resources there's tools and resources out there already that we could bring in. But I also think we need to look at the future of what additional tools and resources we need to be looking into as well.
That's kind of funny. We spend so much time talking about climate change and greenhouse gas emissions and rising temperatures, and then offshoot a lot on fires and how to prevent fires. It seems kind of like water is like the forgotten part of climate change. Kind of, I guess, what kind of things are funding that you think we're kind of missing out on, that we can do better here as a state, especially kind of with these kind of record budget surpluses we're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's I learned that there's the ability to do carbon sequestration in deltas, that they call it, I believe, blue carbon. There's money that could go into research to do some of that. There's just I'm sure there's a whole lot out there in terms of investments that could be done in terms of figuring out how much water availability we have in the state. I'm sure there's a whole lot, but I think particularly the area that I'm really focused in on food, because everybody talks about water availability, building more dams, more storage, and all this, but
Right.
I think we also have to kind of look at consumption and how do we reduce consumption. And I think the first thing that people think is like, okay, well, we have to be able to tell people they have to reduce when they can water their lawns. But the reality is that we have to look at how do we reduce consumption in terms of the food that we eat, the food that we grow, how much food we're growing, and what is the demand and need in California and beyond. Those are the types of things that I think are going to really help in terms of reducing the demand and helping with less water available as climate change gets worse.
Yeah, kind of, touching upon kind of like the state water control board, kind of, I guess, how do you get appointed to the state water control board, and do they necessarily have, a background in water?
So they get appointed by the governors, by the governor, and they get to serve on a term, I believe, for 4 years. And I believe I think it's preferred that they have some experience in the water space. And but I don't exactly know if it's mandatory for them to have water expertise. But as I said, water touches on so many, it touches so many aspects of our life that it's not just having, an engineering degree in some, area of water or water related topic. It's about how water impacts food, how water impacts health, how water impacts every aspect of our life that you can think of, how it impacts energy. Those are the things that I would say that we're not necessarily thinking about, but we should be thinking about, talking about it, and acting on it as well.
And I think you just answered this, but kind of, how is your blue ribbon commission kind of the right approach then?
It brings stakeholders together. It brings the people that do the work, look, the bill is not perfect. There's still some amendments that need to be done, but the whole idea is to bring an an interagency work group together to do this Blue Commission to come out with recommendations and actions that we need to take to be able to live and deal with having less water. And it's not just someone from the water board. It should be how water impacts every aspect of our life, as I mentioned, from health to food, the availability of food, because we know that by 2050, there's supposed to be about 1/3 less water around the world, and that people are going to be living near a basin that is water deficient. But we also know that there's more than likely going to be 1/3 less food. And we also know that there's a connection between good, nutritious food and health. So there's consequences to just having less water. And so that's why we need to bring all these different stakeholders together.
Isn't there any good news in the future? Up to the blue ribbon panel, they're gonna figure out the good news for us.
Well, I think that I have a lot of hope in people. People inspire me, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I think that we can make it happen. We can make the solutions. We can make it work. The question is, can we come together? Can we come together to figure it out? And I'll tell you, I've been getting a little bit of a hard time from some people on, perhaps this being a bad idea, but I think it's, for me, a perfect opportunity to talk about how less water is not just about, building dams or storage. There's a whole lot more other consequences that having less water means, and we need to be looking at those and planning for those as well.
Yeah, how could be planning for a future with less water a bad idea? Can you expand on that? What have you been hearing?
Yeah, and I think that the challenge is that it's already happening, but we're not taking any action on any part of it, which is the frustrating part. And I think that there's always, there's always some sort of fight in politics, right? And especially when it comes to water. And I think, there's no excuses. We all need to just come together. We need to work together. We need to figure it out, because there's just too much at stake. And I just, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Right. Yeah, I guess there's two options, right? You either create more water, or you figure out a way to live with less water. So, probably.
Or you die. Water is life.
Exactly. The grim future. Oh man. So, we just had the bill introduction deadline, a couple of weeks ago. Kind of, what's your bill package looking like, and what are some of the other things you're going to be working on this year?
So also the medical board, making sure that we bring some accountability and transparency there. Obviously, there's a lot of cases that have been coming out of Bakersfield, the district that I represent, and making sure that patients have a voice in the disciplinary action of doctors. We are working on providing a guaranteed income sort of type program for farm workers, because we know that they work very hard, sometimes in extreme heat conditions, and we want to be able to improve their living situation by additional income. We are also working on providing funds and some additional safeguards around water and food, cybersecurity, making sure that businesses that deal with food that grow food, but also communities that manage water, are protected from cyber attacks. I think that's something that's really important. Right. And yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of things that we're working on, but a lot of it will be around water and healthcare, making sure that we better protect the communities across the state.
Some things you guys will, be diving into committee season here pretty soon, and then the state budget, where we're, looking to have $40 billion surplus. What are some of the things that you're looking at for your district, kind of out of the state budget?
Well, one, I mean, I'm going to push and I'm going to continue to mention it until it makes sense, is making sure that the canals here that go through the Central Valley but provide water for 31 million Californians are fixed, and that means more funding for fixing these canals, which was part of my Senate Bill 559. There's a lot of infrastructure needs, from getting additional fire trucks to communities, to also water tanks, emergency water tanks as well. So there's a lot of funding needs in the Valley all the time, but that's kind of prioritizing around healthcare and water is what we're going to be doing.
There's so much in the infrastructure bill federally. How much is that, is allocated to kind of the Central Valley?
I don't have an exact number with me at the moment, but I know there's not an exact number for the Central Valley. There's a number for Western states, which I know a lot of individuals from the Central Valley were part of this coalition to help push to get that money for Western states. So I'm hoping that will provide a part of the funding that these canals need, but we know that they need much more. And the part that I'm asking for is only 1/3 of the total cost. The other third would ideally come from the feds, and then the other third would come from the locals.
Right. It's such a shame, we passed that gas tax, and there's so much money going to roads and bridges and things like that. It seems like, that we neglected to include maybe some water infrastructure included in that. Need a separate income source for that, but much needed, as that stuff is quite antiquated, I'm sure.
I agree. It really is. It's antiquated. We need to fix them. We need to fix all sorts of things when it comes to water.
Right. And
Yeah.
just kind of at the tip of the iceberg right now.
Right.
So, excited to kind of see how your legislation kind of makes its way through the process. I guess, have you got a committee date for its first committee hearing yet?
No, we do not. We don't have a committee hearing date. Hopefully soon.
So, what's the bill number again?
SB 1219.
1219. Okay. Well, we'll keep our eyes out for SB 1219 and see how it goes through the process, and looking forward to seeing the dialogue.
Okay. Likewise.
Awesome. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to talking to you later and see how it goes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Melissa. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.